New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today. Whether you're here for the first time, and if you are, I'm really glad that you found us, or you're here back because you love hearing from the wide variety of voices and guests that we showcase here on the Growing Edge. And today I have an amazing guest, a friend of mine that's been on the show a couple of times before, and this feels like the perfect conversation to be having during these times, because my guest, David Ault, is someone that brings me such a sense of grounded presence, a real mature, spiritually mature voice, and emotionally grounded and awake heart that really soothes my soul and my physical body, my nervous system. And so, David, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm always happy to get your email requests to come. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for waiting so long until the calendar was open. So
well, you've had a lot of adventures since I first invited you back.
Yeah.
We'll get into all that. For those of you that don't know David is a spiritual educator, a coach, an author, a global literacy advocate, and a motivational speaker, and a lot more. Founder and executive director of Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, and co-founder of Nandi Das Inc. And we'll probably get a little bit deeper into all of those roots that you're growing deep in the world. But for now, let's check in. How are you? Where are you? How are you feeling?
Back in Atlanta, and we were speaking before the taping, just the crazy ebb and flow of weather, and 70 one day, and now it's in the 20s here. So
yeah, same.
That's its own roller coaster, just like the rest of life.
It is. Everything seems to be, and yes, we were talking a little bit before, everything does seem to be a bit upside down or topsy-turvy. But I think I've said this before, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It seems like there comes a time when things are going on in the world that just bring us to this hyper-awareness of, for me, this is, am I safe? Is everything going to be okay? Are my loved ones okay? Are the systems that we depend on, are they intact or reliable? And so there's a lot, self-preservation. There's a lot with what's going on in the world, and where are we headed? So I'd love to dive into all of that. Where do we start? I know I'm the host, but you're the voice of reason here.
Well, I do believe, and this is not new, that people are catching on to this idea of, I would call it curating community. And by community, I'm not talking about big numbers. I'm talking about very small pockets of people that have the ability and the maturity to hold two things at once. And those two things at once are the nature of just humanity and the denseness of that and the history of that and the cyclical nature of that, and not sweep it under the rug, not sugarcoat it, not trying to do anything with it to make it be anything other than it is. And then at the same time, and I think that this is where the real maturity and the real muscle comes in, is to also hold simultaneously with that all of the things that you and I have immersed ourselves in with regards to spiritual principles and these big massive, creeds or beliefs about oneness and constancy and infinite possibility. And none of that is wrong, and none of that is specialized for when the world looks a certain way. It's always true. Even the same being the fickleness and our inhumanity towards one another is also true in its own cyclical nature. And that's really the thing I think we struggle with the most, is we default to one side or the other. And rather than, nope, the real work is holding both of those things. So that's the relative and the absolute, that's
Mhm.
the finite and the infinite. And we think we understand that. We think we understand it because intellectually we've all spent our noses in books for years studying all of this. But when the rubber hits the road, when it's time to no longer have the luxury of practicing some kind of conceptual, um, denial that's coded in some kind of spiritual jargon, but to go, no, this is actually a lion's den experience that every sentient being who professes this path of oneness and this understanding and the hunger for all things non-dual, to really bring it credibility and integrity. And there's just no way to get around that. And so it gets very granular. It gets very, atomic, if you will, on a day-to-day basis, because it's not some big grand gestures that we do. It's not in some big conventions that we do. It's in those small, really difficult one-on-one encounters or engagements on social media or anything with a pocket of people who don't see things the way that we see them.
Mhm.
And I don't believe that our role is to fix or change. It's to look at the way in which I'm responding in that.
Mhm.
And I think the term that's helped me the most is self-referential.
Mhm.
So in Buddhism, and a lot of the courses and meditations, I'll have these Rinpoches and these teachers, and they will talk about, self-referential. And when it becomes me, when all the identification is me as David, there will always be suffering.
Mm. Yeah.
And yet, that suffering is actually a necessary part that leads to the grace of understanding that you are in the self-referential component. That's what this life is about. How will you wake up from that
Mm.
without denying it? And that's where it gets loopy, because it feels like we're groomed to, if we're going to champion something, we have to be against something.
Mm.
And this is more of neither pushing anything away or grabbing at. It really is that neutrality, that even the word neutrality sounds passive, and it's not. It's really difficult
Yeah.
to be in observation and to learn a completely different realm of advocacy that has nothing to do with matching energy, and it has everything to do with presence.
Mm.
So to be an advocate and to march and to do all the things that are absolutely necessary has a completely different spaciousness to it when you realize, I'm not going there to argue or fight. I'm going there as this presence to practice, not
Yeah.
to change, but to practice and to actually strengthen my own integrity of what I believe is oneness, even in its apparent absence.
Yeah. There's so much to this human experience and that self what was the term? Self-referential.
Self-referential, yeah.
Yeah, self-referential. That's a tongue twister. Um, to see yourself at the center of your life, and to be in a place of taking it in, not feeling victimized by it, but being able to respond in the most spiritually mature or emotionally awakened space,
Yeah.
is, I think, our job in integrating both our our identity with our collective unity, or non-dual nature.
And
It's
it's identities we're not even aware that we're still so loyal to,
yeah,
you know.
like why our motivations as to why we're so you know so why we have the values we do, why we identify so strongly with certain things and not others. It's our likes and our dislikes, and where did all that come from?
Yeah.
It's a big journey, and I think us in this space of doing self work and attempting to be clear channels to bring our love and grace and joy into the world in ways that don't separate or marginalize, or is really right here at the growing edge, if you will.
Yeah.
It's like, how can we truly lean in and be engaged without othering, without taking offense? It's a very interesting space to be in.
And that space is not void of heartbreak, and
Yeah.
neither should it be. It's
Right.
I was in Cambodia for most of January, and prior to going, this is the thing that happens with growth. It's like, organizationally, my foundation, Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, is growing with regards to the forecasting of what's next. So that means that we're dealing with AI, and we're dealing with degrees, and will degrees even mean anything? And educational paths with regards to soil, and I mean, all kinds of things. There's so much in the parking lot of what we're committed to. And one of those things is just basic structural systems. And we've struggled for years and years and years in Cambodia to kind of move away from the mom and pop management that has always been there on the ground, there, beating our heads against the wall, trying to get, things to reconcile and do what is good stewardship. And all the while, things are getting done, and programs are going, and education is happening, and food programs and water wells and village women programs. It's all happening. But at the same time, there's been this drudge to it, and so before we went, the board said, okay, enough. We're reaching this particular level of our foundation, and these systems need to be in place. So that means that it's our job to go to Cambodia and to find a local CPA office, to find these things, to begin to migrate systems that frees our little school staff from having to do these things, right? And so we went early. We had these long, elaborate business meetings, which you can only imagine, with dual languages. And, I have to do the look at me while I'm speaking, and then have them recite back to me to make sure that there's nothing lost in translation. And we pretty much had it covered. And then a big group came, like Unity of Cincinnati brought this big group over. And my role then was tour guide and, facilitator for 9 to 10 days. And then we were to pick back up these meetings and start the integration before coming back home. And all of that happened. And those last final days of the integration, something was unearthed that we were not aware of. And something, critical with filings and government systems and compliance was never done. And it was not done out of ignorance. It was done out of deliberate, kind of backhanded, kind of, cultural ways that unfortunately are not compliant. And as is the nature of things, once something is known, it can't be unknown. You can't continue to move forward. Once something is known, that's the crossroads. And so this culminated in some big conversations in a big CPA office in Cambodia. And I looked at my administrator and I said, this is your moment of truth. This is your moment of truth. We are creating and committed to a path forward, but it is not going to match the systems of what you have done or the relationship that we've had for 2 decades.
Wow.
This is the crossroads. This is where the change has to happen. And I want you to understand why it has to happen. And the option was given, and she chose no. And unbeknownst to her, we had the little phones on the table and Google Translate, and she looked at the female CPA. And basically a 2-decade relationship was reduced to, well, that man pointing at me and saying, you've got to tell him that the way that I'm going to do it is going to work, kind of thing. And she took this, a long-standing relationship, all of the families, all of the children, all of the programs, all of the buildings, everything that has been such a part of the focus of the work. She chose her authority and power over all of that in that moment. And
were you aware of this at the time? Like, was it, you were just, were you in that very moment, did you realize that she was going one way or another? Like, was it apparent to you in that?
Yeah, it was very clear in that moment because there had been certain things that had led up to that. And then I had talked to this female CPA. Anyway, so the crux of the story was, in that moment, she chose an old paradigm. And my point with that is, and I had a little small group yesterday and we were talking about this, and the word that came up to me was survivalist. So this primordial thing inside, she's a product of one of the most greatest human atrocities, the Khmer Rouge. She survived that as a little girl. She is a product of institutional poverty in developing countries. She is a product of inequality, being a woman. I understand all of that. I do. I really do understand. I know that there are elements of her actual physical survival history that mine won't match. I really understand that. And at the same time, there is decisions that have to be made with regards to just basic laws. And yet in that moment, that survivalist component that you and I might talk about as almost, sometimes we call it a hidden bias. It's like the hidden survivalist that is the thing that drives and runs the engine, was front seat, and you could see it clear as day. And she left, not really realizing the repercussions of her decision. And I remember we walked out of that office and my husband, Jay Ram, looked at me and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I went, I am. I am okay, because the self-referential part of me, I've been practicing untangling enough to know that it didn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
That what that was in that moment was the very raw survivalist part of her that was going to cling to control no matter what. I've seen it in all kinds of circumstances. I've seen it in churches. I've seen it in business, where people will literally shoot themselves in their own foot in order to not relinquish something that is too scary to relinquish. I get it. We've all done it. We have all done it. And I remember walking out into the noisy sun filled streets of that Siem Reap, Cambodia, and standing on that curb. And I just looked up at the sky, and I just was in this, it was Allie, again, trying to describe it doesn't do it justice, but it was so profound to realize that that is just part of the cyclical nature of humanity.
Mm.
And that does not mean that our pathway forward is now over. It actually means that the doors are wide open for us to actually do the things we've been hungering to do for so long. Was it painful? Absolutely. Are there people that we so love and care about kind of now on the periphery of our relationships? Absolutely. And at the same time, if there was a polarity word for survivalist, it would be, I made up this word yesterday, thrivalist, you know? And so it's in that moment, and they are moments. It's not a one and done thing. But in that moment when we can see the survivalist part of us, and we can choose the other part, the more expansive part anyway, that's what it means to hold two things. You're not denying the pain from all of that. It's not about burying the story. It's not about making the story wrong, but it's understanding that something is propelling us. You know, Ernest Holmes used to use the word propulsion all the time. You know, there's an inner propulsion. There is a propulsion for what? There is a propulsion for all sentient beings to move back into their full state of pure awareness.
Mm.
And we go lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime doing that. And most of the time there's, you know, it's most of the option has just been from the survivalist standpoint.
Yeah. Wow, what a moment to have in, you know, being in another country, having a particular idea of how things are going to unfold, and then being presented with this opportunity to see someone's growth point, or, you know, what decision they're going to make, and then
great word. Yeah.
To be able to navigate that, having, you know, a timeline and an itinerary and an agenda to you know, get particular things done. And so how do you meet those moments? How have you developed the capacity and the facility to be able to see the ego structure, the personality structure, the survival mechanisms within another, and be able to respond in a way that is correct for you, for the people that you're representing? I think that's really important to share with people, that because we're all faced with things like this, maybe not in Cambodia with the Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, but in our own relationships, in our own workplaces, in our own, you know, with our finances, where we come to points where we can go one way or another way. And what is it that we can develop within ourselves to be able to meet that moment and have it be, as painful as it might be?
It's to me, the visual that came is like if the survivalist part of us is like a painting in a frame, and that painting in a frame is stagnant. It's not going to grow. It's not going to do anything. It's going to remain stagnant.
Mm.
And yet everything on the outside, that deep calling unto deep, is going to do everything that it can to bust that frame. And it isn't until we even have not just the language, but the tactical understanding of our own participation in that. And for me, it started with the phrase self-referential, because no one had ever taught it to me that way before. That anything, and there was no wiggle room. Anything that is committed to full identification with small s self will equal suffering.
Mm.
However, you have to honor full s self.
Mm.
It's like, wait, what? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, this isn't about disrobing the costume that you're in. It's understanding that the costume is there for a reason, and that the costume comes with a lot of karma, comes with a karmic blueprint. And I think now, and I've probably shared with you before, that little thing that Louise Hay said to me decades ago in the van about honoring the entirety of my journey. I'm not even fully aware that she knew the full depth of what she said. But to me, honoring the entirety of my journey meant that if I'm living in any sort of regret or wishing things had been different, I'm wanting to change this meticulous karmic blueprint. Oh my God, the times I wish that I had been born in a different family. You know, particularly a family that was predicated on poverty and abuse and just incestual violence and just the whole thing, and that none of my siblings are alive except for one, and now he's completely succumbed to Alzheimer's at the age of 72. And that's his path, you know, in managing. You know, I have a brother who shot himself in the head, and just all the different things and the ways in which my sister's lives, you know, went their way, and that's how they dealt with those particular things. And it's like, there were many times that I wished that my circumstances had been different. And for her to say, you must honor the entirety of your journey, overlays now with a lot of this sort of Buddhist remnant that karmic blueprint is exactly what was necessary. And so there's a phrase, your karma is your dharma. That blueprint, that family dynamic, that survivalist primordial thing that still swims in the DNA, all of that is not a curse. It's the you know, the gear that sets you and I up to really, again, the only word I keep thinking about is integrity in moving forward with something that everybody's watching this has been introduced to. And it's a principle. It's a principle that says the only reality is God. You know, at some point, there's going to be a generation of people that have to go, okay, wait a minute. Rather than recite it, rather than pray it, rather than put it in song lyrics, what does that actually mean? And how in the world am I going to live in the integrity of that? And so what it means is that everything unlike that principle rises up in that karmic blueprint, and that becomes my work. Down to the most granular thing, down to the, you know, the neighbor who sent me a nasty text yesterday because somebody who was over here at the house, their tire was up on the curb, and they had, you know, and I understand they just put a new sprinkler system in, and now he's all paranoid, you know, and it's like, it's not about me. And yet there was the moment where I was like, ah, and then I just took a breath and I went, if this isn't self-referential and this isn't personal, I can understand he probably spent a lot of money on that sprinkler system. And just the fact that somebody's tire was just up on the curb, almost touching his lawn, caused a lot of fear.
Yeah. There's
no point in me going back and forth and debating like, chill, dude. It's like, no. And everybody, we're all doing that. And so for me, I have like a 24-hour rule. Ooh, there's some emails that have sat in the inbox, you know, and I just know, nope, 24 hours, just wait. And I make sure that those 24 hours are well spent in spaciousness and doing all the things that I only know to do right now, which is to go, this isn't about me. And this also isn't an indictment on the fact that they too are part of the whole. And so that the good old question, what is mine to do? And I think, Allie, this is the part for me, is that there's embedded in my survivalist thing as a child, making it out of all of that. I want to fix it for everybody. I just do. It's so overwhelming to go to a developing country and to get to know these kids, and then some of those kids disappear and you never see them again. And even particularly in India, to watch these young girls in these villages and the light that is in them and the hunger to learn, and then recognizing that 3 years down the line, that light's not there. And you know why. And you can't fix it. And so there's a reconciliation with the fact that that's still a part of the relative part that I have to hold. And so what am I going to continue to bring to the table? What can I do?
Yeah.
And everybody's got their share of that.
Well, I think it's a good time for a break, even though you're right in the middle of a juicy thing that I could dive right into. I'm going to resist, and we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back with David Ault.
Cool.
Please help us say thank you to all of our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Center for Spiritual Living United Life, Sunshine Cathedral, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Universal Joy Center, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Home Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. On behalf of New Thought Media Network, thank you. And please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. Come expand your spiritual journey. Join us for Just the Talk. Sundays, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Experience Unity Kitchener and Ottawa. Center for Spiritual Living Midtown. Center for Spiritual Living Denver. Unity of Garden Park. New Thought Philadelphia. The Sunshine Cathedral. Unity of Savannah. And the Ault Center for Spiritual Living. Come unleash your spiritual potential with New Thought Media Network.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
And we're back with David. So we all have this opportunity to meet a difficult moment, or that tension when we have a sense that our survival instinct, as you're framing it, or maybe as I would call it, our personality structure or our performative self based on our wounds and our conditioning, that part of us that wants to, react, whether it's to assure our own survival or to keep our loved ones safe or to protect our resources or to be heard or seen the way we want to be seen. There's this distinction between our soulful self, or our, as you were sharing, Dr. Ernest Holmes talks about, what did you say about this one God?
The inner propulsion, or the only reality is God.
Yeah, that essential self, this inner reality that is source energy, or we're part of this one divine presence, and then this coming together. How do we reconcile our divinity with our personality structure and our performative nature that is going to knee-jerk reaction, defend or fight or retreat or what have you? And I think many of us in this space, on this path of self-development and being in the place of our divinity, our essence, we can or have been able to develop a pause before we react. Something that I found very useful is this idea for me when I'm in those moments. It's like, where am I coming from? Is this just a part of my personality performative structure that wants to do this? Or is this, you said 24 hours, and I can relate. Sometimes it's a whole month, of keeping myself at bay because I do have some, insecurity about how's this negatively going to impact others if I make this decision. And I think so many of us in this self-development phase begin to see that part of this performative is being helpful or wanting to please other people or get other people's approval. And so we're really stymied because we're meeting both parts of ourselves, and it's really an edge. And there is great freedom on the other side, but it's so unknown and so unfamiliar. And yet we know the gurus and the teachers have told us to expect this edge, and then we do it, and then there's another edge and another edge.
It's like that frame, the behavioral patterns that you were talking about, the survivalist part inside the picture frame. When deep calls unto deep, it will never stop doing what it can to dismantle the frame. And I become very curious and open to all the different ways that I can say it or demonstrate it. And one thing I value highly from the teacher Ram Dass was, everywhere you look, you see what you're looking for. Everywhere you look, you see what you're looking for. And he posited that, describing, all the days he would be on the road and on the tours, and people would say, oh, I would love to meditate like you, or I would love to do that, but I live in New York City and there's no peace and there's no quiet. And it's like, okay, everywhere you look, you see what you're looking for. If that becomes the excuse why you can't do something, then that's what you will always see. And he ended that by saying, if the only thing is God that you're looking for, then God is what you will see. And that's very poetic. But if you and I really sat down with that and were 100% honest, it's scary. Because if the only thing is God that I'm looking for, that does not include anything that has to do with self-referential.
Yeah.
And the caveats that just want to rush, in and go, yeah, but. And so that's kind of my practice. Well, not kind of, it is my practice. And some days it's the only, everywhere I see what I'm looking for. The only thing that I'm looking for is clarity.
Mm.
Not all the reasons why I'm
Mm-hmm.
right. And I play with that, and I've put little music to that, and we teach that little thing a lot. And it's like, continue to show me things that are in alignment with this. And yesterday it was the Gospel of Thomas. The whole Nicaea, Council of Nicaea, and the selection of the Bible, and the Gospel of Thomas didn't make the cut. And there's that well quoted thing from the Gospel of Thomas. It says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. And what is he talking about?
And if you don't bring forth what is within you will destroy you.
What you do not bring forth will destroy you. And it's like, we're not kidding around here. Thomas is like, at some point, it's not a game anymore. It's not a we're not on an episode of Survivor anymore. We've long been a part of the Thrivalist. And so if I do not bring forth that, if I bring forth what you bring forth, if you bring forth what is within you. So what is within me, what is within all sentient beings, is this, again, excuse the cliche nature, the infinite realm of all things possible, to the degree that this little finite being is open to seeing everything that is infinite. As long as I have breath in my body, then that's what I will see. And so to me, that is equated to bringing forth what is within me. And what is within me is unbounded potentiality. That is not bypass. That is not anything other than the spiritual principle that we've all been reciting and singing and saying for decades. But now it's kind of like rubber meets the road. And so I'm seeing that does not translate well into large community settings, but it does in very small curated communities where people are like, yeah, okay, I get it. And we are helping one another. And I've got quite a bit of those going on in all different variations and forms. And I need that just as much as I know that the people that we're welcoming are benefiting from that as well. And it isn't about numbers. It isn't about growth. It isn't about any of those things. It's about the purity of what is available to those, I believe, who have finally been pushed into the corner far enough that the surrender is actually ready to take place. And so if I bring forth that which is within me, then those frames automatically bust. And is there pain in letting go of all the identity? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I work so hard. And it just means just sit and shut up, David. Just go and sit and be and listen. And if I don't bring forth that, what does it mean? It will destroy me. It means that, to me, it means that the perpetual cycle of suffering, the samskara in Buddhist tradition, will just continue. Yeah. And we all just get to keep coming back and doing it over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired. I don't want to keep doing it. I mean, I'm really honored that I got a human costume. And I don't really have any kind of sentimentality of needing or wanting to do this again. And I mean that. And it's taken me, I'm in my late 60s to get to the point where I could say that.
Wow, that's, I'll have to think about that, because I know it's been said before, and people have tried to talk about coming to a point where this earth experience, isn't all it's cracked up to be, or maybe we don't have the time, the energy, or the stamina to think about possibly doing it all over again. And I'm with you. I feel that same way. But as I take what you just said about what you're looking for, is this why we're here, to come to our
Sure.
60s and go, Jesus, it's again, I'm exhausted, I don't want to do this again. And then, the next incarnation we come back and we're like, oh, I'm going to realize that,
Yeah, you're
being
right.
tired.
You're absolutely right. You know, touche. Because I'm like, yeah, see, and that's what's so brilliant about curating. And somebody was saying, we're always products of our environment. But I remember someone saying one time that you and I are the amalgamation of the 5 people we hang around with the most. And I remember going, ooh. And sharing that with other people, and they're like, I'm a part of a family that I'm trapped, and it's just, but it's just an indicator that we are sponges.
Yeah.
And we're all sponges when we're opening Facebook. We are all sponges on Instagram, and we're reactive sponges.
Oh my gosh, I want to talk about that for a minute, because I've been noticing, over the past couple of decades, I'm sure it's gone on longer than that, but there's been these gurus that come up into the zeitgeist, and we all have our relationship with our particular guru, of whether it's of Indian descent or whatever. And I've noticed in the yoga world, there's been people that have fallen from grace, like Osho, and such. And there's this we project onto these people, these masters or teachers, something, some ideal, I can't even say that word, idolatry, but a different version of it. And then we for those of us that have been, dipping into YouTube and the news, we're seeing another one of our present teachers come up onto the stage, where for many of us in the New Thought space have taught lessons and classes utilizing these books and information. And I'm just wondering what you have to say to this idea of, people coming into a place of leadership and power and, materialism, and kind of with all of this, social platforms and online communities, we our New Thoughts and our get rich quick kind of Rhonda Bryan, law of attraction stuff, and all of this stuff, it seems to be in our face right now, with like, holy shit, we're a part of this. We thought it was out there, othering or theming, that the world's falling apart for everyone, but us New Thoughters, we've been training for this forever, and now here we go. It's definitely given me a pause for thought, for contemplation, and wondering, do I just want to cut ties with claiming anyone's my spiritual teacher? Anyway, let's hear what you have to say.
I will say this, that anything that I'm about to say, anyone will take it and will shred it, and because it will be, if it's diametrically opposed to their narrative, and everybody has a right to do that. I can only speak from my vantage point and my experience. And I will say that after all these years, I have looked back, and for whatever reason, I have been given a tremendous amount of grace in the fact that I have been in the rooms, and I have been backstage, and I have shared platforms with so many people. And they're all on the spectrum. of gracious to just absolutely horrific. And all the way back even into my Pentecostal Christian upbringing and being on the Oral Roberts telecast, global, getting ready to sing when the cameras are turned on. God is greater. And a little choreography with a hand up. And only to know that 30 minutes later, Oral Roberts himself had picked up a chair and thrown it at the cameraman out of a fit of rage, And so it's good to know this, that they're all just human. And they all have their versions of survivalist. And they all come from the same inception point of separation and dualism that you and I do. Does that negate problematic and gross behavior? No, it does not. It's a statement of understanding, period. And then there comes a time when one has the opportunity to go down what I can only say are two different paths. One is the path of othering, where now everywhere we look, we see what we're looking for. We are looking for all the reasons to vilify someone. And that's a very easy path. And we will always, always find agreement. And we will always find our tribe. And we will always find everything from mob mentality to very serious justification and direct experience of abuse. None of that actually, it's not labeled wrong. And then there's this other path. And I cannot attribute to how I got put on that once, because it wasn't from wisdom or skill on my part. It was grace. And I was young, and I was in a trio, and we would be singing with who are now a lot of very notable people, many still alive. This person is still alive. And we were a predominant regular presence with her regularly, over and over again. And she was having to move from one facility to the next because the crowds just kept getting bigger. And I was partnered with somebody at this time, a Sicilian, and he had very strong opinions, and he hated this woman just with a passion. And every time I tried to isolate it down to a specific incident, he couldn't name one. He just loathed her and was not reticent whatsoever in holding back his opinion of her. And yet here I am, we're rehearsing and performing and traveling with her a lot. And so one night I'm sitting and listening to her lecture, and my God, I swear, it's like the moment her mouth opens, it's as if she's channeling. It's mesmerizing. It is a form of just tapping in and letting something else take over, regardless of the human behavior. And I'm sitting there, and for whatever reason, it was like something took my chin and went like this. And I looked over my shoulder at this auditorium, right and left, and I saw people like this. And they were just feeding off of her wisdom. And this blanket over, because my Sicilian boyfriend at the time would say, false prophet, she's a false prophet, she's a false prophet, she's a false, just like a broken record. And in that moment, something took my chin and moved it around and said, there's actually no such thing. Because if one person is benefiting from something that is being transmitted in this moment, then that's exactly what this design is set up for. And I just went, what? And it was like, there is no such thing as a false prophet. Meaning that if there's one single exchange that benefited someone, then that whole dynamic was honorable. It becomes the discernment of the individual to see and decide whether or not then that person is the teacher for them or the path for them. And I will say that there have been many that have been that for a point, and then it was done. And the mature part of me continues to get to know that when it is done, then my exit from that is just as much as my entrance into the next teacher. Because if my exit from a particular religion or group or teacher or whatnot is done with this kind of energy and vitriol and you done me wrong, I will bring that same energy into the next thing that I am seeking. So the main thing isn't about them at all. It's about, did you get what you needed? And are you mature enough to call it a day and move on to the next thing?
So I'd like you to develop some questions for self-inquiry for when we're in that liminal space of, like, you know, things didn't show up the way you'd hoped, and then you're going down a different pathway. What do we need to consider when we're in that place? I would imagine it's something akin to developing discernment. What else do we need to know so we can transition from what we'd hoped or what we were thinking was going to happen, or a way someone was going to be, to, oh, and one more thing, one of my teachers said that when Jesus is said to have turned the other cheek, he was actually turning towards the light. And it reminded me of what you were saying. There's this, like, seeing beyond what the ego structure is, like, trying to convince us is happening.
I think you said it, the ego structure, because if I leave with just a suitcase full of justifications, then I continue to carry that egoic justification survivalist energy in my cell. And that's what I'm really looking for, because that's what is still in the frame. And this is just a personal decision, but that has not benefited me. And I've done it. Ooh, boy, have I. I've left in blazes of glory, about how awful they were, only to be in very raw circumstances and ceremonies and facilitations and things where I had to look at that.
Yeah.
And I had to own that no, I chose that. And what that person was in and of themselves a guru, a guardian between a particular portal of maturation that said, are you ready to walk through this again? Because if you're not, then you will be stuck in this stagnant area and you will continue to bring forth the same thing that you are professing to hate. So what's the opportunity here? To look back and go, thank you, I got it. No matter how painful that was.
Well,
or no matter how much I didn't get my egoic needs met.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, that's very different than just sweeping bad behavior or cruelty or, even, the things that we are looking at with Deepak Chopra and the exploitation of vulnerable children. That's not an excuse for that. And I continue to look for those who have ears to hear that it is not distinguishing between those two things. It's actually holding both of those.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to stop. I want to keep going, but we're right at the end here, David. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll come back and we can have another deep dive. Yeah. And I love you, and many blessings to you. And I'll see you when I see you. And thank you so much to New Thought Media Network. Thank you to the Satya Center, our sponsor. And to you, our viewers, thank you for being here. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.